The sky above Haven wasn't supposed to burn, but it did. Not from sunset, but from war. An alien fleet arrived without warning. 47 warships descending like vultures. No escape. No reinforcements. No hope. Until a desperate signal, fired through ancient alien tech, did the impossible. Because humanity doesn't run. Humanity answers. And when we arrive, we don't come quietly. We come to end the war. Before we dive into this cinematic sci-fi epic, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a story where humanity fights back against impossible odds. Now let's begin. The sky above Kalos drift burned, not with the soft amber hues of its usual twilight, but with the violent glare of warships hovering just beyond the clouds. Invaders, hostile and close. Commander Reese Calder stood at the lip of the colony's final defense line, his scarred features caught in the pulse of flickering red emergency lights. 3 days. That's how long the siege had held. 3 days of endless orbital strikes, of anxiety, of watching the perimeter shields disintegrate, section by section. Commander. The voice drifted in from behind. It was Elin Varin, his tactical officer, boots dragging through ash and oil. She held a scorched tablet, her uniform torn and smeared with something that looked like coolant. North walls down to 18%. One more barrage from their flare cannons, and she didn't finish. She didn't have to. They both understood. How many vessels now? Reese asked. His voice was even controlled. Elin's jaw tensed. 47. 3 more Dread-class cruisers jumped in overnight. Reese gave a faint nod. Kalos Drift had been meant to live up to its name. A sanctuary. The first permanent Terran outpost in the Veilstar sector. Built just 15 cycles ago, now shelter to over 5,000 souls. Pioneers, families, children. Dreamers. And now a tomb in waiting. The civilians, he asked. Still secure. Tucked in the subterranean vaults. We've got rations for maybe 2 more weeks, if we stretch it. Another concussive thud rattled the floor beneath them. The ceiling creaked. No one looked up anymore. Shock had long since given way to numb routine. Elin shifted uneasily. The council's requesting a strategy assembly. They're considering surrender. Reese's expression turned to stone. There won't be a surrender. She didn't argue. She'd seen the aftermath. The fate of colonies that bowed to the Maelstrom Collective. Nothing left but glass and static. The Maelstrom had emerged half a cycle ago, crawling out from the dark fringes of map space. No ultimatum, no dialogue, just annihilation. 3 lesser outposts had vanished before they arrived here. Not a single distress beacon had escaped. We can't do this alone, Elin said. Souls for months out at best, Reese replied. Even if the message got through, it'd be too late. She stepped in, voice lowered. That's not why I came. There's something else. Come with me. They descended. Beneath the heart of the colony, past the sealed residential zones, deeper still, through neglected maintenance shafts and silent backup grids. Elin ducked under a low arch, motioning Reese to follow through the crawlspace. What exactly are we heading for? He asked, his light slicing through the thick shadows. Do you remember when the first Enviro scouts discovered those odd alloy spires embedded in the ridgeline? He nodded. Faintly. He remembered. The towers had been cataloged years ago, old relics, half buried and inert. Archaeologists had deemed them remnants of some long-forgotten culture, dead and dust. No power signatures. No discernible function. Research had been deprioritized, deemed irrelevant compared to getting the settlement operational, Elin continued. Except Calderin in engineering never let it go. When we lost comms with our orbital beacons yesterday, he came to me, said he had a theory. They reached the end of the tunnel. A heavy alloy hatch blocked the path. Elin placed her hand against a crystalline scanner. The door released with a breathy exhale and slid apart. Inside, a chamber opened, vast and carved straight into bedrock. The walls shimmered, plated in metallic geometry that pulsed faintly, though no light touched them. In the center, crouched over an arcane console, stood Calderin. His eyes were red, his hands trembling with exhaustion. "Commander," he said, barely lifting his gaze. "Glad Elon got to you." Reese scanned the chamber, his breath catching. "What is this place?" "It's a relay," Calder said, brushing his fingers across alien glyphs. "But not just a relay. This whole room, is a communication core, and not of human design." His voice rose with excitement, despite the looming dread. "Whoever built it, they used entangled particles to send messages. Quantum resonance, instantaneous data transfer. No lag, no delay, across light years." Reese's eyes narrowed. "You mean it can reach Earth now?" "Exactly," Elon cut in. "If we activate it, we could bypass normal channels entirely. The signal would arrive within seconds." For the first time in days, a flicker of something moved in Reese's chest. Hope. Fragile, dangerous hope. But it was tempered with caution. "Even if it's real, does it still function?" "That's what I've been trying to verify," Calder said, gesturing to the glowing console. "The core still holds energy, some exotic source we haven't identified. I've managed to create a bridge between it and our own systems. But there's a catch." Reese stepped closer. "What kind of catch?" "The network it was built to connect with it's long gone. Whatever civilization ran it is dust now. No endpoints. No handshake protocols." "So it's useless." "Not exactly," Calder replied. "I think I can reprogram it to fire a raw spectrum burst, a quantum shout into the void. If Earth has any receivers tuned for experimental resonance, they might catch it." "Might," Reese echoed grimly. "It's all we've got," Elon said softly. He looked from one to the other, then around the room, this vault of alien miracles hidden beneath their dying world. "How long?" 6 hours, Calder said. "You've got 3, Reese replied. "North Barrier won't see a 4th. Exactly 3 hours later, the relay stood ready, reforged from alien alloy and Terran grit. It resembled something born of both nightmare and hope. Their engineers had spliced Terran wires and modules into ancient circuitry, coaxing it to life, if only barely. "The transmission can't be long," Calder warned. "We're running off backup arrays. A few seconds, max. One message. One chance." Reese stepped forward. His shadow stretched across the chamber. He stood before the interface, drew in a slow breath, and hit record. "This is Commander Reese Calder of Kalos Drift. Our world is under siege by the Maelstrom fleet. 47 vessels. Over 5,000 civilians in shelter. Our defenses are failing. Immediate assistance required. Coordinates embedded." As the message pulsed outward into the abyss, the silence that followed was worse than gunfire. The chamber fell silent, thick with uncertainty. No one could say if their cry had reached anyone, if it had even left the void. Then the earth groaned. Another blast rocked the colony overhead. "Everyone move," Reese commanded. "We hold what's left." On board the command vessel of the Maelstrom fleet, Supreme Strategist Zalcor stood before a vast viewport, his slate-gray features awash in the blue glow of tactical readouts. Kalos Drift flickered below, its outer defenses bleeding power. "Outer arc field nearing collapse," reported his weapons officer, tendrils twitching as more data flooded the console. 2 more volleys and surface incursion can commence." Zalcor offered a slow nod, mandibles flaring with grim pleasure. Tenacious creatures, these Terrans. But in the end, they crumble like all the others. A piercing chime interrupted. One of the sensor monitors flickered erratically. "Unidentified energy surge," a technician reported, originating from the human stronghold. It resembled a data burst, but not through conventional space. "Intercept it," Zalcor snapped. "We can't," the technician answered, confused. It vanished, as if it never traveled through known subspace at all. Zalkor's eyes narrowed to slits. Rising from his throne-like command seat, he advanced toward the pulsing holomap of the besieged colony. The glow painted his face in warlike hues. "It's irrelevant," he muttered. "Even if they manage to send a signal, help will not arrive in time. There is no ship that outruns causality itself." He turned toward his crew, a faint clicking sound escaping his throat, their species' version of amusement. "Maintain pressure. Before nightfall, Kalo's drift will be ash, just like all the rest." What Zalkor could not know, what his entire species had failed to consider, was that humanity had been quietly pushing past theoretical thresholds he didn't believe possible. And Commander Reese Calder's desperate call had not traveled for months. It had arrived in seconds. Thousands of light years away, the signal struck Earth's planetary defense headquarters at 3:12 Coordinated Terran Time. The Northern Command Hub, nestled in the Canadian sector, was quiet, night shift in full swing. Most officers had already clocked out. Only a skeleton crew remained watching the stars. Lieutenant Aaron Decker sat slumped in his chair, eyes heavy, chin resting on one hand. 20 minutes left. 20 minutes until he could drag himself home to a half-eaten dinner and a soft bed. The displays in front of him scrolled with the usual background chatter: cargo updates, station alerts, one routine skirmish in the belt. Nothing urgent, until every console screamed to life. Red lights, sirens, auto lockdowns engaged. Aaron's chair jolted beneath him. He straightened like a soldier snapped from a dream. His console bathed in alerts, systems flaring across sectors. A system glitch? Then he heard it. The voice. Crystal clear, echoing as if spoken in the same room. "This is Commander Reese Calder of Kalo's Drift. Our world is under siege by the Maelstrom fleet. 47 enemy ships. Over 5,000 non-combatants in shelter. Defenses compromised. Immediate assistance required. Coordinates attached." Aaron froze. Not a distorted signal. Not a degraded audio packet trickling in from the edge of known space. No, the voice was right there, as if Calder was standing 5 feet behind him. "Not light years away, Commander," Decker shouted, his voice cutting through the alarms. "Tier 1 emergency relay, origin point, Kalo's Drift." Fleet Marshal Adrian Holt was through the doors in seconds, his lined face set like stone as the message replayed in full clarity. "That's not possible," he muttered. "Kalo's is deep in the Veilstar sector. We couldn't receive real-time data from that far out, not with any known tech." "The authentication checks out," Aaron replied, pointing to cascading code on his screen. "Quantum lock verified." The relay hit a frequency outside the standard registry. Something entangled. It bypassed the delay entirely. Holt's jaw tightened. His eyes were already shifting toward strategy. "Get me the high command. Now." 2 hours later, the Situation Room buried beneath Earth's Terran Defense Complex was alive with tension. Every major branch of Earth's interstellar defense was represented. They stood in silence, absorbing what they were seeing. 47 enemy craft, General Elena Vorin said, her voice grave. "Even if we had the ability to get there instantly, which we don't have enough strength in that sector to challenge a fleet of that magnitude." "And Kalos wasn't designed for this kind of siege," Holt added. "Their perimeter was meant to stop raiders, not armadas." A grim quiet settled over the room. Everyone present understood the implications. Kalo's Drift wasn't just another dot on the map. It was humanity's flagship colony beyond Sol, a beacon of ambition, unity, and hope. If it fell, others would follow. "If we could reach them," Holt murmured, eyes fixed on the galaxy display with its daunting distances. "Perhaps we can." Heads turned. A young man stood in the doorway, hair tousled, his lab coat hanging loosely over a wrinkled shirt. The badge on his chest read Dr. Elias Wren, Applied Dimensional Mechanics Division. Who authorized this intrusion? Voren snapped. I did, Holt said quietly. Dr. Wren has been working on something unconventional. Proceed, Holt added. Elias cleared his throat and stepped forward, clearly unused to standing before the most powerful military minds on Earth. He tapped his tablet. In the center of the room, a rotating hologram bloomed into view, angular, sleek, terrifying in its scale. This is Vanguard, Elias began. She's the first prototype of our Singularity-class battlecruisers. We've been experimenting with spatial convergence technology under Project Torrent. Instead of crossing space, we fold it. You're talking about a jump, Holt said, like the signal we received. Elias nodded, his voice steadier now. Exactly. Instead of weeks or months, we could reach the drift in minutes. A stunned silence swept through the room. How many ships can make that jump? General Voren asked. Elias hesitated, his earlier excitement now dulled by the reality he was about to share. Only one, General, Elias admitted, his confidence wavering. The Vanguard is the sole ship equipped for the jump, and we've only tested it across short distances, nothing remotely close to Veilstar. So you want to throw one unproven vessel against 47 hostile warships, another senior commander scoffed. Not exactly, Marshal Holt interjected, arms crossed in thought. The Vanguard was built with deep load capability. She can carry an entire wing of interceptors and multiple strike teams in her internal bays. She's also armed with the most advanced weapon systems Earth's ever produced. It's still a suicide run, General Voren argued. Holt turned to Elias. Doctor, what's your best estimate? Elias inhaled deeply, gathering his thoughts. The odds of a successful full jump to Veilstar? Around 60%. Margin of error, 5 either way. As for surviving the encounter, he hesitated, that depends on how skilled our people are. The room grew tense. Holt nodded slowly, then turned toward the gathered brass. We're not sending her in blind. We load her with elite strike squads and the top fighter crews we have. If the Vanguard arrives without warning, she'll have total tactical advantage. The Maelstrom won't expect company for months, if ever. And who, Voren asked coldly, would be reckless enough to volunteer for that kind of mission? Holt allowed himself a tight smile. They already did. In the cavernous hangar of the Vanguard, chaos and purpose danced in unison. Launch drones glided between fighter craft, fueling and loading payloads. Assault teams filed into armored dropships. Engineers in exosuits performed last-minute calibrations on propulsion conduits that had never been pushed this far. At the center of it all, Commander Jace Rennick stood on the bridge, his arms folded behind his back as status feeds scrolled across the main holo display. He was 42, twice decorated in frontier skirmishes, a tactician and pilot with more hours logged in combat than most command staff saw in a lifetime. When the call had gone out, when Holt had asked for volunteers, Jace had been the first to answer. Report, he called out, his voice steady. All systems nominal, Commander, said his executive officer, Lieutenant Kale Aaron, from her console. Engineering confirms the Torrent drive is stable and locked. All personnel accounted for. Combat stations fully manned. Jace gave a nod. In just 12 hours, they had assembled the finest crews from across the planet. Pilots who flew like gravity didn't exist. Soldiers who specialized in impossible odds. Techs who could hack enemy systems mid-firefight. And all of them were now aboard Earth's most dangerous experiment. Elite shock troopers, trained in zero-atmo warfare, volcanic terrains, even the gravity wells of black hole stations, stood ready in full armor. Technicians who could jury-rig propulsion cores mid-battle. And the guests. Jace asked without looking away from the display. Kale gave a faint smile. Special operations are locked in. Colonel Thane says his squad's itching for a real fight. That made Jace grin. Colonel Dax Thane and his covert unit were legends, ghosts in the battlefield. If anyone could reinforce the colony's defenders, it was them. An alert chimed. Fleet Marshal Holt appeared on the bridge display, his voice cutting through the final preparations. Commander Rennick, clearance granted. You are go for launch. Remember, this is a rescue first. Extract those civilians if possible. But your priority is intel. Learn how the Maelstrom fights, then get that knowledge home. With respect, Marshal, Jay said calmly, we're not planning on retreat. For a brief second, Holt's stern features cracked into something like pride. Then go. Make humanity proud. The transmission ended. Jace turned toward his crew. Every eye on the bridge was locked on him. Listen up, he said, voice sharp, clear. In a few minutes, we attempt the farthest jump any Terran vessel has ever made. If this works, we'll arrive at Kalos in time to stop a massacre and to remind the Maelstrom what happens when they pick a fight with our people. He paced slowly, his gaze heavy with purpose. I won't sugarcoat it. This is dangerous. The math is solid, but the tech is new. The enemy is overwhelming, but Earth believes in us. The colony is counting on us, and I believe in every one of you. Lieutenant Erin Kale straightened at her station. All systems show ready, Commander. Then let's make history, Jay said. Engage the torrent drive. A deep hum rolled through the Vanguard. The resonance climbed in frequency until it was no longer a sound, but a pressure, thrumming in bone and blood. On the main screen, the stars twisted. The blackness of space rippled and warped, like fabric in a storm. Drive at critical mass, the chief engineer called out. Jump in 3, 2, 1, and then the universe shattered. Outside, the stars streaked into impossibly long lines, then vanished entirely. The Vanguard, its crew, and Earth's final hope tore free from the known cosmos, plunging headfirst into the void. The experience was nothing like the clean simulations. Commander Rennick gripped his chair as the ship convulsed. Space itself screamed. The hull groaned like something alive. The jump drive roared, pushing the vessel past the edges of engineered possibility. Warning indicators exploded across every panel. Status. Jace barked. Kale struggled to stabilize her console, readings jittering and distorted. Unknown, sir. We're through, but sensors aren't online. Position uncertain. Torrent core is overheating. Outside, through the fractured display, reality flickered in unfamiliar shapes. The impossible had begun. Beyond the reinforced glass, Jace saw only chaos, roiling shadows pierced by jagged bursts of violet energy. Lightning, but not. A dimensional current, flickering like the dying light of stars torn from reality. They were drifting through a space between spaces, a corridor not built for human senses. A realm the universe itself seemed to reject. Engineering report. Jace barked into the comm chief systems. Officer Ren Kelly's voice crackled back through static, strained and barely audible. Drive still holding, Commander, but only just. This isn't what she was built for. We're deep past the red line. Redirect all remaining power to structural shielding and the core, Jace ordered. Already on it, Kale called out from the bridge, fingers flying across her console. But containment is fluctuating. She's fighting us. A sudden jolt rocked the entire vessel, followed by a dull, distant thud like something tearing loose from the hull. Damage report. Jace shouted, gripping his chair as the deck pitched. Tactical feed coming in, the officer responded. Sectors 12 through 15 report hull breaches. Containment fields are in place, but we lost 2 assault craft from Bay 3. Jace swore under his breath. Those strike ships were vital for ground deployment. ETA to Kalos, he asked. Kale shook her head. Impossible to calculate. The NAV arrays reading noise. We're off chart. Could be 10 minutes, could be 10 hours. Jace pushed up from his command chair, bracing against a tremor that rippled through the floor. I'm going down to check on our combat teams. You have the bridge, Lieutenant. Stabilize us if you can. Yes, sir, she said, sliding into the captain's seat. Jace stepped into the lift. In the primary hangar, Colonel Dax Thane stood before his elite troopers, helmeted, armored, and eerily calm amid the shaking of the ship. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were engineered for chaos. The blast doors slid open, and one of the troopers barked, "Commanders on deck." The squad snapped to attention. "At ease," Jace said quickly. "Colonel, a word." Thane stepped away from his formation. His imposing frame made him seem like part of the ship's architecture, weathered, immovable. "How bad?" he asked without hesitation. Jace didn't sugarcoat it. "We're pushing past tolerances. The drive's bleeding energy, and the structure's groaning. If we make it to Kalos intact, it'll be by force of will." Thane nodded, unsurprised. "We've deployed under worse. If Vanguard can't land, we'll drop straight from orbit." "Good," Jace said, but his tone shifted. "There's more." Intelligence flagged something. He handed Thane a tablet. The colonel scanned through rapidly scrolling images, void craft captured in distant systems, dated logs, predictive overlays. "They're not scavengers," Jace said, voice low. "This isn't random. They're targeting every advanced civilization they find systematically, one by one." "This isn't about Kalos," Jace muttered. "It's just the next mark." Thane's expression darkened as he studied the projected data. Timeline overlays, system eradications, confirmed silences. "So this isn't a rescue," he said slowly. "It's containment. We're trying to stop the tide before it reaches Earth." "Exactly," Jace confirmed. "Marshal Holt believes this is prelude, an extermination campaign to clear threats before an assault on Homeworld." He locked eyes with Thane. "Even if we can't save Kalos, we must learn how they fight. We need that data." The ship suddenly jolted hard, violently. Metal shrieked. Both men were thrown against the bulkhead. "Commander Rennick to the bridge, now." Kale's voice crackled through the intercom, clipped and tense. Jace and Thane exchanged a look. "Stand by, Colonel," Jace said, turning for the lift. The bridge was chaos when he arrived. Acrid smoke coiled from a destroyed console. Sparks flew. Crew scrambled between workstations. "Report." Jace shouted above the noise. Kale looked up from the central display, her face pale. "The torrent drive is destabilizing. Something ruptured mid-phase. We're being ejected from the corridor forcefully. Position." "That's the problem," the NAV officer answered grimly. "We didn't make it. By our latest NAV fix, we're still nearly 2 light years out." Jace's stomach turned. They were closer than they'd ever been, but still too far. Regular drives would take weeks. "Options?" he asked. Engineering cut in over the comm. Rim Kelly's voice was strained but focused. "Commander, I may have something. The core's intact, just unstable. If we divert plasma from the main reactor directly into the torrent chamber, we might be able to force one more jump. Short range only." "That sounds like a fast way to disintegrate," Jace replied. 30% chance of success, Ren said bluntly. 70, we blow ourselves apart. But it's our only shot at reaching Kalos in time. Jace turned toward the viewport. The stars out here were tranquil, unaware. They could stay in the void, repair, transmit everything they'd learned. They could survive. Or they could gamble it all for the lives of 5,000 souls staring into the heavens, waiting for salvation while the storm bore down. He closed his eyes. "Do it," he said. "Prepare for another jump." A murmur rippled across the bridge. No cheers, just the steady discipline of people who understood the cost. In the launch corridor, systems began to rearm. In the reactor chamber, fuel lines hissed open, rerouting volatile plasma. On the command deck, Lieutenant Juno Shea, Earth Intelligence Division, stepped forward. a datapad clutched in her gloved hands. A quiet chime preceded Lieutenant Juno Shea's approach. Her voice was low. "Commander, there's something else." She extended a datapad. Jace took it and scanned quickly. The display showed high-resolution sensor logs, collected during their brief emergence from the fold field. Jace's brow furrowed. "You're sure this is accurate?" Juno nodded, her jaw clenched. "Completely. Energy signatures, fleet composition, command algorithms. This isn't just any void formation. This is the fleet." Jace's eyes darkened. "Their central force. And their warlord," Juno confirmed. "He's there. Akalos." Jace exhaled slowly, the full weight settling in his chest. "If we take them out now, we could break the spine of their entire offensive," he said. Juno nodded. "But even with the Vanguard, with everything we've got, we're still facing long odds. They outgun us in every category." Jace handed the tablet back, expression unshaken. "Then we outthink them. Get this data to Colonel Thane and Tactical. I want coordinated strike plans now, something that hits them where it hurts." "Aye, Commander." The deck beneath them vibrated again. Power conduits groaned as the engineers rerouted every spare joule to the jump core. Jace crossed the bridge, voice steady over the ship-wide channel. "All stations, initiate emergency transit protocols. This jump will be worse than the last. Lock down and brace. Hold your lines." As crew scrambled to secure systems and gear, Jace returned to the command chair, buckled in, and stared at the star field ahead, its stillness deceiving. "The torrent is primed," Rin reported from engineering. "Reactor is unstable, but it'll burn one more hole through the veil." Jace took a breath. For Earth. For Kalos. Jump. The Vanguard surged forward like a god woken from sleep. Space twisted, again, and was gone. But this time, the tremble of the hull felt less like panic and more like purpose. This wasn't an experiment anymore. This was retaliation. And on Kalos' drift, the nightmare had only worsened. Captain Rylan Voss huddled behind shattered ferrocrete, his face streaked with blood and soot. The colony's northern shield had collapsed 6 hours earlier. Since then, void forces had descended like a plague, sweeping through districts, torching all resistance. Now, it was down to street warfare, crumbling corridors, breached buildings. Lieutenant Sarah Vale slid in beside him, her uniform torn, rifle clutched tightly. "They've reached Central Sector," she said between gasps. "We're down to maybe 20 holding it. They won't last long." Voss didn't speak. He had already ordered the remaining civilians into the lowest shelters. No comms, no backup, and their weapons were running dry. "What about East Block?" he asked. "Holding, but barely," Sarah answered. "Bennick wired some of the old mining shafts as traps. It's slowing them down." Suddenly, the ground erupted, a chain of explosions echoing from the east. Shrapnel pelted their cover. Dust choked the air. Voss shielded Sarah as debris rained down around them, his arm curled around her helmet. When the shock faded, he looked up through the settling haze. "We're falling back," he said, eyes grim. "Position 3. Final line." Weapons charged with a low whine. "We hold them here," Ryland said. "They do not reach the lower vaults." Sarah gave a terse nod, about to reply, when her comm crackled to life. She glanced at the readout and froze. "It's Bennick," she said, blinking. "He's still at the relay core. Says he's detecting a massive energy flux orbital level." Ryland's brow furrowed. "Reinforcements." She shook her head slowly, scanning the message. "No, he says it doesn't match void energy at all. It just appeared. Out of nowhere." For a split second, something like hope stirred in Ryland's chest. He shoved it down. Hope with no foundation was a death sentence. Tell him it's likely a feedback glitch. Relay tech's ancient. Ignore it. But before the words finished leaving his lips, the sky above lit up, white and blinding. Both soldiers ducked, shielding their eyes as daylight was overwritten by something fiercer. When they looked up, the crimson haze of the Void fleet was gone. In its place, streaks of piercing blue-white light, burning down from orbit like falling stars. "What is that?" Sarah breathed. Before Ryland could answer, his wrist comm flared to life. The voice that came through was steady, confident. "This is Commander Jace Rennick aboard the Vanguard. We received your signal, Kalos Colony. Reinforcements are inbound. Hold your ground." On the Maelstrom flagship, Warlord Xyrath stood tall above his command tier, talons tapping rhythmically, until the alarms shrieked. "What now?" he growled, tone edged with irritation. "Unknown anomaly above the colony," his sensor officer replied, mandibles twitching in confusion. "The energy profile, General, it doesn't match anything in our databases." "Display it," Xyrath commanded. The main screen shifted. Stars shimmered above Kalos, interrupted only by the orbiting armada. Then, space folded in on itself. A rift, like torn fabric, opened mid-orbit. From a fracture, an enormous vessel surged forth, unlike anything the Void had ever faced. Its hull gleamed silver blue, lined with layered plating and glowing lance ports. Behind it, a flood of smaller craft poured through, sleek, angular, radiating raw velocity. Xyrath rose to his full height. No civilization commands instantaneous traversal. Not even the humans. "They can't be here." "Sir," his weapons officer shouted, "they've launched fighters, and dropships are descending to the surface." Xyrath's disbelief twisted into rage. "Redirect fire. All units, focus on the lead ship." The Void fleet pivoted with precision. Weapons locked. Bolts of searing plasma screamed across space, slamming into the Vanguard. The human vessel absorbed the assault. Its shield shimmered like water struck by lightning, brilliant, beautiful, unbroken. "Their defense grid is resisting our barrages," one officer said, unable to mask the shock. "Unacceptable." Xyrath hissed. But even as he shouted, the Vanguard retaliated. From the Vanguard's prow, searing lances of ionized fury erupted, blue-white beams that pierced stars. 3 of the Void's cruisers vanished in synchronized detonations. Shields failed instantly, hulls buckled, then tore apart in zero-atmo implosions. For the first time in his long and brutal career, Warlord Xyrath felt something rare, something dangerous: fear. On board the Vanguard, Commander Jace Rennick studied the battle map with quiet focus. Their arrival had fractured the Void fleet's coordination. Formations unraveled. Command chains frayed. Panic spread like cracks in ice. "Lock onto their flagship," Jace ordered. "Strike their nerve center." Target acquired, Lieutenant Kale called back. "Fighters are green for launch." "And Colonel Thane?" "Dropships are loaded. He's waiting for the go." Jace gave a sharp nod. "Deploy all squadrons. Inform Thane he's clear to initiate ground ops." From deep within the carrier's underbelly, bays yawned open. Earth's fighters screamed into the vacuum, sleek, predatory interceptors darting like mercury across the Void. Unlike the Void's hulking dreadnoughts, these ships were built for agility, for violence in motion. They weaved and spun between enemy fire, spearing cruisers with missile clusters and microbeams. "Sir," the comms officer called out, link established with Kalos Defense Command. "Captain Voss is requesting immediate fire support in District Zenith." "Mark the coordinates," Jace said. "Relay them to Thane's unit. Tell him backup is inbound." The main display zoomed in on the enemy's flagship, a monolith of black alloy, bristling with artillery. Its core reactor throbbed like a heartbeat of death. "It's turning to bring its cannons to bear," Kale warned. Jace's mouth curved into a humorless smile. "Let them fire. Raise shields. Full return volley, main arrays only." The Vanguard's weapon grid surged to life. Massive capacitor rings spun up, funneling energy into the forward emitters. While the Void relied on brute force plasma, Earth's latest arsenal was surgical, phased particle columns designed to bypass traditional defenses. Fire. Twin beams leapt across space, razor precise. The Void flagship's barrier flared once, then shattered. The beams chewed through armor plating, exposing decks to the vacuum. Explosions blossomed across its spine. Direct impact. Tactical confirmed. Weapons grid offline, reactor unstable. Kale's voice chimed in again. Colonel Thane reports touchdown. Ground teams are active, engaging enemy squads in Sector Zenith. Jace allowed himself the first breath in hours. The battle wasn't over, but the unthinkable had happened. They were here, in time, and they were winning. On the shattered streets of Kalos Drift, Rylan and Sarah crouched behind rubble, weapons low. The ground shuddered. At first, they feared more Void artillery, until they saw the contrails. From above, unfamiliar ships sliced through the clouds, their hulls gleaming with blue and silver. Painted on their flanks, Earth's emblem. The Azure Sphere, home. A shimmering barrier wrapped the descending drop ships like a cocoon of blue fire. They came, Sarah whispered, voice trembling, eyes glistening. They actually came. Rylan couldn't find words. Against every expectation, against time itself, Earth had answered. And not in months. In days. It defied reason. But the proof was there in the sky, carving through smoke and ash. The transports landed behind their position in the cratered courtyard. Ramps hissed open. What emerged looked less like soldiers and more like myths, towering figures clad in exo-armor that shimmered with active defenses. Compared to the worn rifles of the colonists, their weapons were art, sleek, humming with untold power. One of them approached, tall, broad-shouldered, his helmet folding back with a mechanical whisper. "Commander Voss?" he asked. Ryla nodded, still reeling. "Thane Koran," the man said, extending a gauntlet hand. "Earth Division Aegis. We heard Kalos was in a tight spot." As Rylan gripped his hand, strength returned to his limbs like current through wire. "How?" he managed. "How the hell did you cross the stars this fast?" Thane smiled. "Prototype tech. They call it the Torrent Drive. First field run. Not exactly a smooth ride, but it got us here." Around them, his soldiers fanned out, taking firing positions with practiced precision. Rylan watched as the troopers activated linked defense grids, their armors synchronizing like a living wall. "What's the current sitrep?" Thane asked, his tone shifting from friendly to all business. Rylan snapped into briefing mode. Void troops entrenched in east and central sectors. Civilians sealed in vaults 4 and 5. We've set fallback lines, but we're thinning fast. Thane nodded. "Copy that." He turned, tapping his comms. "All units, deployed to Quadrants Alpha through Delta. Civilian protection is priority 1. Engage and dismantle all Void resistance. Show these freaks what it means to cross Earth." He looked back to Rylan. "Hold this ridge. We'll sweep the rest." Rylan straightened. The exhaustion that had gnawed at him for days lifted, replaced by something he hadn't felt since the first strike. Resolve. "We'll hold," he said, locking eyes with Thane. "Count on it." Above them, the orbital firefight raged on, a storm of fire and light. The Vanguard, Earth's flagship, danced between enemy salvos with unthinkable agility for a ship its size. Its triple-core engines twisted it sideways as alien plasma blasts streaked past. Commander Jace Rennick stood calmly at the center of his command deck, fingers laced behind his back, eyes fixed on the tactical sphere. The ship rocked as it took a hit. "Pattern Delta," he ordered. "Focus fire on propulsion and weapon systems. No kills. Disable and isolate." Lieutenant Kale looked up, uncertain. "Sir, we need prisoners. Tech data. The Council wants to understand these things before we wipe them out." The command display pulsed. Earth's strike squadrons darted through the void like stingers, narrow, fast, brutal. Their sleek profiles evaded the Void's sluggish turrets. Each fighter carried enough firepower to rupture destroyer-class armor. But they didn't come to burn. They came to break, precisely methodically. And the enemy wasn't ready. Each strike from Earth squadrons landed with ruthless efficiency, targeting shield cores, disruptor turrets, and exposed hull seams. Enemy fleet is fragmenting. Reported tactical. Formations are collapsing. They're pulling back. Commander Rennick narrowed his eyes. That wasn't right. This wasn't how the Void fought. They're stalling, he said coldly. They're repositioning. Cut their spine before they link again. Mark their flagship. I want it burning. The Vanguard's primary batteries spun up, vibrations humming through the entire bridge. The air shimmered, ion-charged, as energy built in the firing nodes. Then release. Twin arcs of concentrated fury carved through space, slamming into the Void command cruiser's propulsion banks. The massive vessel lurched, spinning as fire poured from its aft decks. Confirmed impact, came the call. Their drives are disabled, they're adrift. Jace allowed the corner of his mouth to twitch. Deploy strike teams. I want their high commander alive and on his knees. On the surface, what had begun as a last gasp had become a rising wave. Colonel Thane Coron surged through the fractured city streets, his exosuit hissing with kinetic deflections as alien bolts ricocheted off the plating. Advance, he roared, storming through shattered barricades. Keep pressure. Don't let them regroup. Alongside him, Rylan and the militia pressed forward. Where moments ago there had been despair, now there was drive, an unstoppable rhythm. The Void's foot soldiers, long used to slaughtering weak resistance, found themselves cornered and crushed by elite precision. Earth's operatives moved like phantoms, silent, surgical, coordinated. Through smoke and collapsed towers, they struck and vanished. In the plaza, Sarah fought shoulder to shoulder with troopers clad in sleek jet-black armor. The burn in her muscles had vanished. All that remained was purpose. They're falling back, she shouted over the thunder of rifles. Ryland scanned the perimeter, Void squads retreating, abandoning ground. Push through, he barked. Secure the bunkers before they regroup. A sudden explosion lit the sky. One of the Void's heavy crawlers erupted in flame, torn apart by an overhead orbital blast. Thane landed nearby, armor scorched and steaming. East perimeters cleared, he reported. Void's lines are breaking. They're fleeing to the LZs. Ryland's expression sharpened. They're extracting. Thane activated his uplink. Vanguard, this is Coron. Enemy forces are retreating toward exfil points. Request immediate air interdiction. Don't let them lift off. Affirmative, came Rennick's reply. Wings are rerouting. Confirmed. Void flagship disabled, boarding teams en route. Ryland staggered. The pace of the day was incomprehensible. Hours ago, they'd been buried in hopelessness. Now, the impossible was happening. We're winning, he asked aloud. Thane met his eyes, voice low. They've never faced warriors who fought back like this. Not like us. According to command, Thane muttered, eyes still scanning the skies, Void's been quietly erasing small settlements, testing species too weak to resist, like sharpening a blade before a war. He pointed upward, to the violent streaks of blue fire in orbit. But they miscalculated. Badly. That ship up there? The Vanguard? It's just Earth's first testbed. We've been gearing up for this the moment we step beyond our sun's reach. Above them, the heavens pulsed with fire, Void cruisers erupting in brilliant bursts as Earth's fighters danced between debris. They chose the wrong species to provoke, Thane said coldly. Today they learn what resistance really looks like. On the fractured command deck of the Void's flagship, High Warlord Kreth watched with growing dread. His once proud fleet, a force feared across star systems, was being torn apart. Every station around him was bathed in crimson light, alarms wailing like shrieks of the dying. Human boarding parties have breached levels 3 through 7, his lead guard shouted, voice tense, limbs twitching. Our forces can't repel them. They're weapons. We don't even understand how they function. Kretha's claws flexed, his armored frame trembling with rage. This couldn't be happening. These humans were supposed to be primitive, newly spacefaring. Now they moved through his flagship like reapers. How many vessels can still escape the gravity well? He growled. 15, maybe, his navigator replied, frantically pulling up star maps. The rest gone or crippled. A third of his armada annihilated. A catastrophe unlike any in void military history. Order the surviving ships to initiate jump protocols, Kreth barked. They are to return to the Citadel. Warned the High Circle, we have underestimated the Terrans. The officer hesitated. And you, Supreme Kreth? But before the warlord could answer, the sealed bulkhead to the bridge slid open with a cold hiss. Dozens of Earth soldiers flooded in, weapons drawn, sleek armor glinting in the red haze. A tall human stepped forward, eyes locked on the alien commander. His tone was disturbingly calm. High Warlord Kreth, I presume. I am Commander Jace Rennick of the Terran Strategic Command. Your fleet is finished. Your legions are collapsing. I recommend surrender. Kreth bared his fangs, hatred burning in his for crimson eyes. You believe this is a victory? Fool. You've won a skirmish. The void spans systems you haven't even named. We will return with legions, and we will purge your people from the stars. Rennick didn't blink. His voice remained level. That's unlikely. He took another step forward, the silence on the bridge thick as iron. While you are busy losing this battle, our AI tore through your databanks. We now have the locations of every forward base, every staging ground, every fleet trajectory, even your Citadel's coordinates. Kreth froze. That name, Citadel, should not be on any human tongue. At this moment, Rennick continued, Earth is mobilizing hundreds of ships just like the Vanguard. By the time you stand trial for your war crimes, the Void Empire will be nothing but myth. The warlord's eyes went wide, hatred giving way to the one emotion humans had never seen from his kind. Fear. Impossible, he rasped. Rennick's smile was razor thin. You thought that about this day, too. He looked around the shattered bridge, his voice dropping to a whisper only Kreth could hear. Reconsider what else you're wrong about. 3 days had passed. Haven, a colony once teetering on the edge of oblivion, had begun to stir with life again. Smoke no longer clouded its sky. The enemy had been routed, their warships either shattered or seized. What remained of their leadership? High Warlord Kreth and his inner circle sat confined aboard the Vanguard, awaiting extradition to Earth for judgment. Commander Elias Rourke stood quietly at the edge of the central plaza, where the scars of war were slowly being erased. Earth's engineers worked shoulder to shoulder with Haven settlers, welding, rebuilding, healing. Above them, the Vanguard glinted in low orbit, a steel sentinel against the stars, a symbol that Haven would never stand undefended again. Commander, came a familiar voice. He turned to see Mira, his second in command, approaching alongside Commander Jace Rennick of Earth's fleet. The last vaults have been cleared, Mira reported, her voice lighter than it had been in weeks. All civilians accounted for. We didn't lose a single one. Elias exhaled, his relief quiet but immense. We owe Earth everything. But Jace shook his head. You owe yourself more than you think. That message you sent. Without it, we wouldn't have arrived until it was far too late. You turned the tide. Elias looked away, the question heavy in his chest. And now, what happens next? Now, Jace said, gazing upward as night began to spill across the horizon. Now, Earth understands the danger. The Vanguard will remain stationed here, our shield, while reinforcements are built. The Void tried to divide us, isolate us. They thought we were scattered, vulnerable, easy to silence. The stars winked into view, sharp and infinite above the colony. They were wrong, Jace finished. Humanity moves as one now. An assault on any world is a challenge to all. And we've shown what happens when Earth answers that call. Elias turned toward the landing pads, where restrained Void officers were being marched to transport shuttles. One figure paused, tall, defiant even in chains. "You," Kreth snarled, his voice thick with venom. "You should have fallen easily. No one was coming for you. You were nothing." Elias stepped closer, meeting the creature's gaze without flinching. "I warned you," he said quietly. "Help always comes. Just not in the way you expect." The warlord was pulled away. Elias turned back toward Haven. The colony stood battered, yes, but unbroken. Its people were alive. Their children were safe. And above them, Earth's strongest vessel kept vigil. A silent vow carried across the stars, to every outpost, every settlement, every voice crying into the dark. "You are not alone. We will always come." Haven was just the beginning, and the galaxy will never be the same. If you enjoyed this story, give a thumbs up, share it with a fellow sci-fi fan, and let me know in the comments. What would you do if Earth was the only line of defense? Don't forget to subscribe for more tales of courage, survival, and humanity's rise among the stars. Until next time, stay sharp and stay human. Elias Grant stood alone before the massive viewport aboard his command vessel. He stared into the stars, filled not with wonder, but rage. 3 years had slipped by since the tragedy that reshaped everything. 3 years since the massacre on Horizon Outpost. The deck of the HSS Retribution was eerily quiet. Only the low mechanical hum echoed softly. Scarlet illumination pulsed across the interior walls. Every Terran ship now used red lighting, a visual oath to remember the blood lost. Captain Grant called Maya Rhodes from the targeting console. "We've received another communique from the Zorati. They're requesting peace talks again." Elias turned. Maya looked barely 25, but war had carved years into her eyes. Her fingers glided over the tactical board, like someone molded for battle. Most humans were like that now. "Put it on main hollow," he ordered. The center of the bridge shimmered as the projection activated. A towering, lithe alien appeared, blue-skinned, four-limbed, Ambassador Raxel of the Zorath Dominion. The same empire responsible for Horizon's fall. "Citizens of Terra," Raxel spoke in flawless standard, "we reach out with sincerity, hoping to end this prolonged conflict. Much has been lost on both fronts. We offer peace, territory, and restitution for prior actions." Elias gave a dry, bitter laugh. "Mistakes," he echoed. "That's what they call it. Should I dispatch our standard response, sir?" Maya asked. "Not just yet," Elias said. He crossed the bridge and tapped into another feed. "Bring up the Horizon archive." "You've watched those files 50 times this month," said Derek Owens from a helm. The veteran officer's silver hair and lined face betrayed years of sorrow. His son had perished on Horizon. "And I'll watch them 50 more," Elias muttered. The screen lit up with familiar footage. The final hours of Horizon Colony, humanity's first major settlement beyond their native system. Home to 50,000 souls, families, seniors, workers, children, all seeking a future among the stars. The footage displayed the morning of the attack. Laughter echoed as kids ran through artificial parks. Adults headed off to work. Lessons unfolded in classrooms. It could have been any small town, except it floated in orbit. Then the enemy descended. The Zorati fleet emerged from the void. No forewarning, no transmission, no chance to yield. They simply opened fire. Horizon's outer structure buckled under the barrage, searing into molten ruin. Oxygen vented into the black. Thousands perished in seconds. But the true horror followed. Boarding squads stormed the station, clearing each section, executing everyone they located. They captured every moment and sent the recordings to Earth. They wanted humanity paralyzed with fear. Elias watched as the scene shifted. Maria Alvarez, a schoolteacher, hiding in a classroom with a dozen children. She read to them softly, trying to keep their terror at bay. And the knight rescued the princess. Maria's voice trembled. They lived happily ever after. The door burst inward. Aliens flooded in. The feed ended. Elias shut his eyes. He remembered each line Maria spoke, every terrified expression, every scream that followed. "Captain," Maya whispered, "Fleet Admiral Lane is requesting contact." Elias opened his eyes and faced the comm screen. Admiral Jordan Lane appeared, commander of all Terran armed fleets. Like Elias, she was flanked by crimson lighting. Like Elias, she hadn't smiled in years. "Elias," she began, "I've seen the peace transmission, and I know what's running through your mind." "They butchered 50,000 civilians, Jordan," Elias said. "They filmed it. They broadcast it like entertainment." "I know," Lane replied. "And they believe 3 years is enough for our memories to fade, that we'll accept their terms and move forward." "What are your directives?" Elias asked. Lane didn't hesitate. "No talks. No forgiveness. No survivors." Mercy wasn't what they were asking for. They wanted to know what a cornered apex species does. Now they were about to learn. Elias felt a chill crawl across his expression. "Message received, Admiral." The feed cut off. Elias faced his officers. Each one had lost blood on Horizon Outpost. They hadn't forgotten. "Aria," Elias said evenly, "transmit a response to the Zorati envoy." "What's the message, Commander?" Elias saw Maria Alvarez's face again. Her students. Families torn apart over lunch tables that would never be said again. The tapes the enemy sent to shake Earth's spirit. "Tell them this," he said darkly. "Terra remembers. We recall each name, every look, every word whispered on Horizon Outpost. We recall your actions, when you believed we were prey. Now, you'll learn what we are when we stop being kind." Aria punched in the transmission. "Dex," Elias called to his pilot, set heading for the distant edge. Aria, without hesitation, began powering every onboard weapon. "We're ending what they began." The HSS Retribution turned away from the Armistice vessels. Hundreds of Terran warships pivoted in unison. Peace was what the galaxy longed for, but Earth needed justice. Red luminance beat steadily across the deck, like the pulsing hearts of the 50,000 who'd never come home. 3 years ago, the enemy had revealed what beasts truly looked like. Now, humanity would return the lesson. Miles away, Rylan Cross prowled the dim corridors of the stealth cruiser HSS Phantom. It had one function, tracking prey. No glossy interiors. No cushy quarters. No scenic windows. Just a blade in space, carrying hunters. Rylan commanded a covert unit called the Crows, Earth's solution for war criminals of alien origin. While armadas clashed in orbit, the Crows chased architects of genocide, one kill at a time. "Commander," came a whisper behind him. Lena Hart, demolition artist. Give her scrap and chewing gum, and she'd make hell explode. Trailing her was Darius Flint, the marksman. He could tag a target at 3 meters in zero grav, never missed. Never laughed either. Together, they were Crow Unit 7, with a reputation drenched in blood. Aliens had dubbed them the Shadows Who Remember. Rylan wore the title with pride. "Eli, give us the rundown again," he murmured into his comms. Eli Marsh, their eyes in the dark, replied calmly. He stayed back on the Phantom, feeding them targets, guiding the blade. "Objective is Warlord Varek of the Zorati." He signed off on the Horizon assault. Rylan came to a dead halt. That name was burned into every Earthborn memory. Varek, who had stood in the charred rubble of Horizon, grinning through the flames, broadcast to Earth like it was a performance. "He's burrowed deep inside a bunker on Arcturus Prime," Eli continued. "The invaders assumed their tech and armor made them untouchable. They believed Earthkind lacked the brains to crack alien designs." Naomi gave short breath. It might have been a laugh. "They always underestimate us. That's why we keep stomping them," Jonah murmured. The trio of wraiths reached the descent chamber. Their vessel hovered, cloaked and silent, above the atmosphere of Zalvian Prime. The world below shimmered with violet fog, beneath which lay the keep where Commander Threx believed himself untouchable. Kellen checked his loadout for the last time. He carried a railgun forged with salvaged enemy alloy. It could rip through any defense they had. Naomi had her charges and her sabotage rig. Jonah clutched his long-range rifle, and enough rounds to bury a battalion. Remember, Kellen told them, the enemy follows codes and customs. They expect fair fights, duels. But that's not what we're offering. We're not here to play knights, Naomi said. We're here to settle debts, Jonah added. Kellen nodded. Exactly. We twist their own rules into knives. We hijack their creations, and we strike from the shadows. The descent bay opened. Below them swirled the electric haze of Zalvian Prime. The three Terrans dove headfirst, plummeting like meteors toward enemy soil. As they dropped, Kellen remembered when he first watched the Horizon Station footage. Back then, he'd just been a grunt in the trenches, one more face in the war. But those tapes changed him. Watching those aliens grin at human agony, something inside him turned to stone. They landed without a whisper. The impact absorbed. The suits masked every sound and signature. Around them, the strange jungle pulsed under alien sunlight. Strongholds 2 miles north, came Iris's voice in their comms. I'm picking up 50 guards topside, maybe 200 deeper inside. 50 sentries? Naomi muttered. They really think we're too dumb to matter. They slipped into the violet woods. Every tree, every ridge burned into memory. They'd spent weeks studying this place. No leaf or trail went unnoticed. The natives of Zalvian believed their world untouchable. But that was their greatest mistake. Kellen recalled his Wraith unit training. Humanity had one lethal edge. We weren't bound by evolution. Aliens were shaped by the peaceful rhythms of their homeworlds. They fought as their ancestors did. But Earth was chaos, a planet forged in disaster. It raised survivors, not soldiers. We didn't have noble customs. We had rage and refusal to die. As they approached the bastion, Kellen spotted the guards, tall and azure-skinned, with forelimbs and translucent weapons. They stood in formation, watching for frontal assaults. But the wraiths weren't coming that way. Naomi discovered a runoff shaft beneath the fortress wall. Too narrow for alien warriors, but just wide enough for humans. They crawled through the reeking ductwork, 1 hour of filth and stench, before emerging inside enemy walls. Jonah, find a nest, Kellen whispered. Naomi rigged the toys. I'll go get our guest. They split apart within the alien citadel. Kellen crept through corridors lined with abstract murals and unknown fragrances. He passed chambers where the enemy slept, dined, and chatted idly. They weren't concerned. They believed the Terran fleet was still far off. They assumed their defenses were unbeatable. They thought Threx was secure behind layered shielding. They were wrong on every count. Kellen found the commander's chamber. At the summit of the citadel, beyond the reinforced entrance, he caught the sound of alien voices. Low laughter, muffled speech, filled with arrogance. They were celebrating, likely another human defeat, or perhaps another planetary raid. Logan tapped his comm, target found. Ilara? Jace? You set. Explosives armed, Ilara breathed. Visual on 6 patrol units, Jace responded. Awaiting your go. Logan inhaled slowly. His mind drifted back to the teacher, Lucia Morales, reading fairy tales to terrified children, to the 50,000 lost at Horizon Base, to the sick broadcasts the aliens had sent, as if humans were a species to be broken. For Horizon, Logan whispered. For Horizon, came the reply. Logan burst through the entry. Inside, Supreme Commander Thraval stared in astonishment. The alien was larger than Logan had imagined, hulking, fanged, eyes burning like molten ore. You do not belong here, the general growled, struggling with the Terran tongue. This keep is inviolable. Logan lifted his weapon. 3 cycles back, you made a decision. You sent your horror reels. You thought we'd kneel. Thraval lunged for his sidearm, but Logan was quicker. What you gave us was memory. One shot. The invader collapsed. Outside, Ilara's charges roared, rattling the structure. Screams pierced the air as Jace eliminated guards with surgical precision. The stronghold, once deemed untouchable, went up in smoke under alien skies. The trio vanished into the same sewer chute they'd entered from. By the time enemy forces arrived, there were only flames and bodies. The humans had disappeared, like wraiths. Aboard the vessel, Logan examined the dossier that Mara had compiled. Countless alien warlords still walked free, creatures who had butchered Earthborn families and expected no consequence. "Who's the next, Mark?" Logan asked. Mara gave a grim nod. "Commander Tlexer." He directed the horizon footage. Logan's jaw tightened. The campaign wouldn't stop. The enemy had tried to break Terran will with carnage and propaganda. Instead, they had forged predators. Meanwhile, Mira Donovan entered the grandest hall she'd ever seen, the Assembly of Worlds. It was a cathedral of politics, so vast that clouds swirled inside its crown. Nearly 900 alien races had sent envoys. All waited to hear what Earth would declare. Behind her walked Major Reescalder, her security lead. His grip never left his firearm, not even here. No Terran trusted easily anymore. The chamber resembled a massive amphitheater. Delegates lined the walls in tiers, their forms lost in shadow. Some resembled towering mantises, others shimmered like glass sculptures. A few floated in spheres of viscous fluid. But one truth was shared. Every eye was on the human delegation. Every eye blinked in fear. Mira stepped to the central dais. A hovering projection enlarged her image across the chamber. She appeared minuscule beneath towering species, but she felt immense. She carried the weight of the massacred. Emperor Nerix of the Zarn Dominion rose from a crystalline seat, 20 feet tall. His form pulsed with cobalt energy. His voice was brittle and sharp. "Representative Donovan of Earth," he began. "We extend welcome to this assembly of reconciliation. Too long has blood defined our shared cosmos." Mira said nothing. Her stare was ice. "We concede that misjudgments occurred," the Emperor continued. "The Horizon tragedy was an error. We present restitution, 3 planetary systems, a formal accord, an everlasting pact." Across the arena, alien leaders gestured solemn agreement. Their languages buzzed like static, sang like wind, or rumbled like mountains. They yearned to lay war to rest. Mira approached the mic. Her voice echoed across creation. "You describe it as an event," she murmured. "That's what you call it? An unfortunate event? An error?" She tapped a control on the podium. The projection above her shimmered and shifted, now displaying the image of Layla Morgan, a schoolteacher who perished aboard Horizon Outpost. "This is Layla Morgan," Dana said firmly. She was 28. She taught second-year primary on Horizon. She had a daughter, Mia, just 6 years old. The image changed again, now showing Layla in her classroom, surrounded by students, reading aloud. It was footage from the morning the invaders struck. While your fleet tore into Horizon, Layla was reading a book to a dozen young students, Dana said. She was doing everything she could to keep them calm as your troops smashed through the corridors. She tapped the panel again. Layla's voice echoed through the assembly chamber, shaky but steady, filled with tenderness. "Once upon a time," Layla said in the recording, "there was a courageous knight. No matter how dark the night, he never gave up hope. He always protected the innocent." Absolute silence fell over the crowd. 847 species, representatives of 1,000 civilizations, all listening to the final moments of a human educator. "The knight battled monsters and dragons," Layla's voice continued, trembling now as heavy footsteps approached. "But his greatest weapon was love. Love gave him strength no evil could match." Then came the sound of the door blown apart. Then the children's screams. Dana ended the playback. The room was deathly quiet. Her own heartbeat pounded in her ears. "That was not a mistake," she said sharply. "That wasn't some unfortunate misunderstanding. That was slaughter. That was the execution of children. High Chancellor Vake Toller shifted on his opalescent dais. President Avery, he began, voice low, we do not deny your anguish. But surely, now, is the moment for reconciliation. Surely, this is the time for renewal. Dana chuckled cold and hollow. You want renewal? You think we're ready to let go? She activated another sequence. Now the display cycled through portraits. Old, young, smiling, solemn. Humans. All gone. These are Horizon's people, Dana said. 50,000 lives wiped out. We know every face, every name, every single one. She gestured at the projection. This is Tarakan, age 4. He dreamt of flying freighters. This is Nora Evans, age 72. She was reading bedtime stories when you erased her. The images kept coming, an endless stream of stolen futures. Each photo burned into human memory. We remember them all, Dana said, voice firm. Every child in our schools learns their stories. Every Marine in our fleet carries their portraits. Every ship bears their memorial. A delegate in the gallery shifted, visibly shaken. A member of the hive species rose, his words buzzing like an electric storm. President Reeves, what value lies in holding onto the past? The fallen will not rise again. Peace is built by the living. Evelyn Reeves turned slowly, her gaze cold and cutting. You ask what remembering achieves? It reminds us who betrayed us. It reminds us of the price we pay when our children bleed. It is our fire. She addressed the chamber, voice rising like a drumbeat of war. For 3 years, you've pleaded with us to let go. You've offered us land, minerals, reparations. You ask us to pretend that New Horizon never fell, to smile and play friends. Her tone sharpened, slicing the silence. But we are not you. When our people suffer, we do not forget. When our children die, we do not forgive. When you show us your monsters, we become the reckoning. Emperor the Vox stood once again, his robe glittering in the chamber lights. President Reeves, what more do you demand? We have given all within our means. She gave a tight, humorless grin. What do we want? We want you to remember what happens when you confuse compassion with cowardice. Every time you see our ships, every time you hear our language, every time you dare stand near a human child. She signaled to Commander Vega, who activated a new projection. It showed war footage. Human fleets decimating alien armadas, black-clad shock units, storming warlord citadels, tribunals, and executions. You showed us terror, Evelyn said. Now let us introduce you to justice. The hall erupted. A storm of voices in hundreds of dialects swelled into a frenzy. Anger, pleading, fear, chaos. But Evelyn stood firm. We will chase down every commander who issued the orders, every foot soldier who fired on our civilians. We will remember every single face, every betrayal, every scream, and justice will come. She turned and began her departure, Vega falling into step beside her, weapons still armed. Behind them, Emperor the Vox called out, President Reeves, what must we do to be forgiven? She paused, turned back. Forgiveness. The word echoed in her mind. She saw Maria Tanaka again, her voice shaking but steady, reading fairy tales to terrified children as death drew closer. She saw 50,000 souls who would never feel sunlight again. You want forgiveness, she repeated. Her tone was soft, deadly. Earn it. And then she walked away. In her wake, the chamber of 847 alien civilizations fell into a deep, terrified silence. The war had not ended. It had evolved. They had wanted to break humanity. Instead, they had awakened memory. And a species that remembers is the deadliest kind. On the deck of a UHS Vindicator, Noah Grayson watched the largest conflict in galactic memory unfold. Before him, 10,000 alien warships formed a shield wall around their capital world. Behind him, 5,000 human cruisers stood ready to strike. Kether Prime, heart of the Zafir Dominion, floated ahead like a sapphire dream. White clouds, silver cities, twin suns gleaming. 3 billion lived on that world. Few had spilled blood. but their rulers had. "Admiral," said Communications Officer Lieutenant Riley Sato, "Zafran weapons are charged. Quantum disruptors active. They can tear us apart, atom by atom." Grayson nodded. They're finally fighting like survival matters. But it was already far too late. Spoke into his wrist comms unit. "Status of the rescue fleet?" His partner's voice responded instantly. Dr. Elena Grayson coordinated the civilian escape corridors. Even amidst carnage, humanity clung to morality, the one line they'd never cross. "We've evacuated 2 million so far," Elena informed him. "But their high command's blocking further departures. They're turning their own into meat shields." A fresh blaze of fury lit up Marcus's chest. Even facing defeat, they used innocents like sandbags. 3 years of war, and they still hadn't learned. "Fleet Admiral Grayson." Another voice crackled over the comm. It was Captain Ron Callahan from the star cruiser Defiant Hawk. "We're locked in and prepped for the final strike. Just say the word." Marcus studied the holomap. Red glimmers, human fleet. Blue, enemy forces. They were outnumbered. They'd been outnumbered every time. And they hadn't lost once. "All vessels," Marcus broadcasted across channels. "This is Fleet Admiral Grayson. Today, this ends. Today, we remind the stars what it costs to harm human children." 5,000 voices echoed back for Kepler. The battle ignited. Enemy disruptors fired first. Searing ultraviolet beams sliced space, cutting clean through steel and shielding. Where they landed, human ships didn't explode. They vanished, erased like chalk from a board. But still no retreat. For every vessel lost, 2 surged ahead. Their crafts, agile, fast, relentless. They zipped through annihilation, rays like hornets through rain. Marcus's gaze locked on the Dauntless, led by Commander Avenite. Her frigate tore into enemy ranks. 3 beams hit her head-on. Her hull peeled like foil. Still, she didn't waver. "Ava," Marcus yelled, "abort. Your ship's falling apart." "Negative, Admiral," she responded through heavy interference. "I've got their mothership in my sights. I'm finishing this." Marcus's fist clenched as Ava's burning wreckage collided with the enemy's nerve center. A solar flare erupted, so brilliant it cast shadows on the alien homeworld. "Commander Knight confirmed Kia," said Officer Raina Lin, her voice unsteady. But she took their control hub with her. Across the stars, human crews made the ultimate sacrifice. Falling ships, but never empty. Every death took an alien with it. No medals. No headlines. Just names and duty. But it wasn't enough. For every act of bravery, the disruptors answered with silence and destruction. They needed more than courage now. They needed the impossible. Then Ron Callahan's voice returned. "Fleet Admiral," he said, "I've got a plan. Insane, but maybe doable." "Go," Marcus said. "We snagged a Zenthian sun bomb last month," Ron explained. "If we push it into their fleet's core and trigger it," Marcus caught on instantly. A sun bomb didn't just destroy ships. It murdered stars. It detonated right in the heart of the enemy fleet. Everything for 1,000,000 miles would be turned to ash, including the human ship carrying it. "Eli, that's a one-way trip," Marcus said quietly. "I'm aware," Eli answered. "But, Admiral, every person on this ship volunteered. We all lost someone when Kepler burned. This is our chance to give that loss meaning." Marcus shut his eyes. He was sending them to their deaths, but they wanted it, needed it. To turn grief into justice. To etch their names beside the 50,000 dead. "Approved," he finally said, low and steady. "Go with fire, Eli." The Crimson resolve banked toward the alien fleet center. Behind Eli Navarro stood his elite team, Sam O'Connor at the helm, threading a course through chaos. Chief Tech Leo Hahn keeping the engines running as shrapnel chewed through steel, and Communications Officer Tessa Vorn, linking with the fleet for a coordinated push. "Eli," said Elena Grayson's voice over comms, "the whole universe is watching. Children will learn your names. You'll never be forgotten." Eli grinned as the ship rattled from another hit. "That's all we ever wanted, Doc, to matter." The resolve dove deeper into the kill zone. Ultraviolet death beams sliced all around. Shields blinked out. The hull split open like a cracked shell. Still, they advanced. Nova charge ready, Leo Han called out. 30 seconds. Eli glanced around the bridge. These souls had walked through fire beside him for 3 years. They'd followed him into hell. Now, he was leading them out one final time. It's been the greatest honor, serving with each of you, Eli said. The honor's mutual, Captain, Sam replied. 20 seconds. Enemy leaders caught on. Every cannon and disruptor they had locked onto the tiny, broken human ship. 10 seconds. The resolve was barely more than a skeleton, held together by pain and vengeance. But still it flew. 5 seconds. Eli thought of teacher Mara Lynn and her class of 12. He thought of the families burned from history. He remembered the alien broadcast meant to scare them into submission. For Kepler, Eli murmured. The nova detonated. A newborn sun bloomed between stars. It burned briefly, mere seconds. But in that breath of time, it blazed brighter than the twin stars of Xanthos. And when it dimmed, the enemy fleet was gone. 10,000 ships, 10,000 lives, erased in a blink. On the bridge of the Ironwell, Marcus Grayson stared at the display. Where blue lights once pulsed like a heartbeat, now silence. My God, whispered Tessa Vaughan. They actually did it. They had pulled it off, but Marcus wasn't cheering. His mind was on Eli Navarro and his crew, brave souls who gave their lives for others to live. Martyrs who would never witness the peace they died building. All units, Marcus spoke into the command line. The enemy fleet has been eliminated. Commence ground deployment. But remember, civilians remain on that world. We are not here to mirror the horrors they inflicted on us. The Terran fleet descended toward Zalnareth. The battle was done, but Marcus understood. Winning the war had been the easy part. What came next, that would define everything. Beneath the clouds, 3 billion alien citizens looked up. Human starships falling like meteors. They had heard the rumors of merciless vengeance and retribution. They braced for death. But what landed wasn't nightmares in uniform. It was medics carrying rations. It was engineers repairing aquifers. It was nurses tending to plasma burns. The aliens stood in disbelief. They had taken innocent lives. They expected wrath. They ignited a war and thought they'd perish with honor. What they received instead was something alien to them. They were met not by admirals or politicians, but by ordinary people, people who chose not to become monsters in return. Peace had come, but the real story was only beginning. Isla Merrick stood behind the crystal pane window of the Galactic Assembly headquarters, gazing down at a reformed universe. Half a decade had passed since the Zalnareth offensive. 5 long years since humanity rose as the dominant force among the stars. Yet triumph tasted hollow on her tongue. A historic signing was set to unfold in just an hour. Ambassadors from over 800 worlds would commit to the Soul Accords. They'd relinquish their weapons. They'd recognize Terran-administered memorial planets. They'd allow prosecution of their wartime commanders. They would submit to Earth's protection. The galaxy would bow today, but Isla questioned whether this is what the fallen of Kepler dreamed of. Fleet Marshal Merrick, a voice called behind her. She turned. Standing there was General Nolan Reyes, the symbol of the Rimfront victories. He had led more campaigns than any commander alive. But he looked worn, bones heavy, eyes dimmer than his 45 years. How's this moment hitting you, Nolan? Isla asked. He slumped into the nearby chair. Honestly, he said, rubbing his temples. I'm exhausted, Isla. Exhausted from being the monsters kids run from. Exhausted from being feared. Tired of conquest. Isla murmured. He gave a slow nod. They all knew the truth. They had become something they swore they'd never become. Creatures other species whispered about in bedtime horrors. Lucy asked me about the war yesterday, Darren said softly. She's 22 now. She just got accepted into the new Interstellar Peace Corps. She asked me if what we did was right. What was your answer? Asked Mara. I told her. I'm not sure anymore, Darren admitted. The door hissed open once again. Chancellor Ilara, when stepped in, flanked by her security. Beside her walked a young woman with clear eyes and her father's determined jaw. It was Lucy Hart, Darren's daughter. She stood for a new chapter in human history. Commander, Admiral, Ilara greeted with a curt nod. Are we prepared for the summit? Mara studied the woman who had carried humanity through fire and darkness. Ilara had once been the rallying cry of vengeance, the voice of every soul lost at New Horizon Station. But now, she just looked worn down. Ilara, Mara said gently, do you ever doubt that maybe we pushed too far? Ilara didn't answer right away. She crossed the room, gazed through the window at the avenue below. Alien delegates were arriving under heavy human protection. They moved carefully, spoke low, always glancing around. Every morning, Ilara whispered, every morning I wonder if Alina Rain would be proud, if those children she shielded with her body would want this future born from their names. Lucy stepped forward, young, but her voice had a steel to it. With all respect, Chancellor Wynne, maybe that's not the question anymore. The older leaders turned to her. Maybe it's not about what the fallen would think, Lucy continued. Maybe it's about what we, the living, do now. We avenged New Horizons. We got justice. But what now? What do we do with the peace? Before anyone could reply, a staffer burst through the door. Chancellor Wynne, the Zenthri delegation has arrived. Princess Shire requests a private audience before the event. Ilara raised an eyebrow. What does she want? She says she has new information about New Horizon Station. 10 minutes later, they gathered in a secure chamber. Princess Shire entered flanked by 2 silent guards. She was young, perhaps the Zenthri version of 30. Her shimmering skin was faint silver, and her hands trembled slightly as she approached. Chancellor Wynne, she said carefully, her Terran accent smooth but deliberate. Thank you for agreeing to see me. What is it you want, Princess? Ilara asked coldly. Shire placed a small cube on the table. I need to show you something my court has hidden for half a decade. Something about the day your New Horizon Station fell. She tapped the cube. A projection flickered to life. A Zenthri battlecruiser's command deck. Commander Korvek barked orders to fire on New Horizons. But another figure stood beside him, shouting, resisting. Pause it, said Mara. The figure's voice echoed. These are innocents. This violates every interstellar accord. Who is that? Mara asked. My brother, said Shire quietly. Prince Kalian. He tried to call off the assault on your outpost, commanded High Commander Varix, who promptly had the defiant noble executed for insubordination. The projection continued. Prince Mailer stood before the general, voice desperate. Reconsider this path. If we slaughter innocents, humanity will never forget. They'll pursue us to the edge of the stars. Varix simply raised a hand and ordered the prince detained. Humans lack resolve, he declared. Once they see our might, they'll bend the knee. He miscalculated, said Lady Yelvanna as the image faded. My brother saw the truth, and you did chase us across the cosmos, just as he warned. Commander Rhea studied the alien princess warily. Why reveal this now? Because not all of us stood with Varix, Yelvanna replied. Some of us resisted. Some still carry that guilt. And I have a proposal. What sort of proposal? Asked Jonas. Yelvanna retrieved a gleaming data crystal from her cloak. This holds the identities and coordinates of every surviving Drothian warlord, every officer tied to the massacre on Orphean Prime, every trooper who opened fire on unarmed refugees. She laid it gently on the table. I offer it freely. I'll aid in hunting them. I'll testify. I want justice served. And in return, Rhea asked. A possibility, Yelvanna replied. A future where perhaps generations from now, my people might prove they are more than the sins of their past. A heavy silence hung in the room. Major Elise Quinn broke it first. What's your verdict, Madam Chancellor? Do we extend that chance? Rhea held the crystal in her palm, aware it contained the last unpunished names tied to Orphean Prime. The final ghosts. I believe, she said after a pause, this isn't mine to decide alone. 2 hours passed. The grand convocation commenced. Delegates from across 800 star-faring civilizations gathered beneath the Great Dome. At the heart of the chamber stood the memorial monolith, etched with 50,000 names, each a soul lost on Orphean Prime. Chancellor Rhea Marlowe stepped forward. She scanned the crowd, some fearful, some defiant, many uncertain. "Today, the Orion Charter is ratified," she began. "Today, a new order rises, one led by Earth. But power isn't our purpose," she continued. "Stewardship is." She raised the crystal device Yelvana had gifted her. This artifact contains the names of fugitives from justice. We could use it to fuel endless retribution. We could wage vengeance unending. She turned to the monolith. But those who died on Orpheon were not warriors. They were scholars, builders, children, dreamers. And for their sake, we must build, not burn. She placed the device on the dais. We will hold the guilty accountable, but we will also grant the innocent a path forward. The galaxy once feared us. Today, we ask it to hope with us. With a signal, the chamber dimmed. Above, 50,000 points of light shimmered into view, each one a name, a voice, a dream lost. "These are not just echoes," Rhea said. "They are promises of what was and what might still be. We cannot resurrect the dead, but we can choose to be worthy of their memory." She met Yelvana's gaze. Forgiveness is not a gift. It's a journey, one you have to earn. And today we open that road. The summit concluded with ink on parchment, but more importantly, with something rarer, reconciliation. That evening, Commander Quinn stood beside Chancellor Marlowe at the viewing gallery. Together, they gazed at the artificial constellation above. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Rhea asked. Elise smiled faintly. "I think we made the human one. We remembered the fallen, punished the wicked, and gave those left behind a shot at redemption." Rhea nodded, mist in her eyes. Maria Voss would have liked that. Overhead, the stars glimmered, not just in sorrow, but in promise. The war was over. The peace had only begun. And somewhere in the vast silence of space, the galaxy was beginning to understand. The race that remembered everything was also the race that could forgive anything, so long as it was earned.